Baltimore's upcoming primary election will be consequential, and not just because residents are expected to vote primarily by mail due to the COVID-19 pandemic. June 2nd's mayoral election comes after a massive corruption scandal that led to a federal indictment against the previously elected mayor in 2019. One leading mayoral candidate, City Council President Brandon Scott, is fighting to limit the power of the office he is seeking. City Council President Brandon Scott, thanks so much for speaking with us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
So you've been in office for almost a decade. You haven't always held the current position and views you hold now, but now you are running for office while you're actively fighting to limit the power of that office. Can you reflect on that?
Yeah, it's a simple thing, right? It's about when you get into public service, you get into it to represent the people, and in this case, a city that you want to see succeed in the best way possible, not for personal gain. And this is also for me about personal growth, right? I used to think that the system was fine and that we just had bad mayors, but now I've grown to know that our system is broken. It needs to be changed. And when you have even plugging in great people into a broken structure, it means that they're going to be doomed to fail. And this is what this is about. This is also about understanding what got us to this point, right? I'm working to weaken the Board of Estimates control of the mayor because we know that board has been used for corruption, right? You have to learn from your mistakes and make it extremely hard for anyone else to come behind and do that and do what's best, not what's best for me, right? I'm not running to be the mayor of Baltimore so that I can have all the power. I'm running to be the mayor of Baltimore so that I can put Baltimore in a better path with a better system so that we can truly be more.
So a lot of these reforms were introduced during the Healthy Holly scandal, including being able to override a mayor's veto. And we saw that in the past, progressive reforms like a $15 minimum wage, the council wasn't able to override the mayor's veto because they didn't have those 12 votes. The proposal now is to lower that threshold. That's already been vetoed by the current mayor. He vetoed a proposal to lower the number of votes needed to have a veto. What's your response to that veto?
Well, I mean, I think it's unfortunate. It's not just that. If you think about that $15 minimum wage vote, it was also able to slide through because there was a time limit and there was no council meeting, right? So the other bill that was vetoed was that. For us, it's about making sure that we do the right thing. No other jurisdiction around us in our region, our state, has that supreme high number of votes needed to override a veto. What the council was pushing and what we're proposing and what was vetoed is simply to put us in line with the other jurisdictions, right? And when I'm the mayor next year, if I can't get 10 council people to agree with me that a bill should be vetoed, then guess what? There's probably something wrong with the idea of vetoing in the first place. It's unfortunate. We look forward to having a discussion with the council members to see how we're going to proceed, but we have to understand that this is not about one person's personal power. This is about building a better system of government for Baltimore.
One of the other proposals, changes to the city charter, is to give the city council the power to allocate money in the budget. In Congress, the House of Representatives, the Senate has power over that budget. That doesn't exist on the local level here in Baltimore. Why are you seeking that change?
Well, listen, this is one of the ones that we're still debating, and we're going to be looking to see best practices around the world, right? This is why these aren't overly political. You can see that the reforms that we've pushed already are the ones that are common sense, right? That no one can say is a political move at all. Making sure that we change the way the Board of Ethics is done. Making sure that we can actually remove a mayor from office if they do something illegal, which we couldn't do last year, right? Changing the veto override. But these other pieces of legislation to talk about the budget, right, and the authority in the budget. We're going to be looking to see best practices around the world and making amendments and changes to make sure that we're meeting those best practices. Even the ones that I proposed personally, making Baltimore join basically every county in Maryland and the cities that surround us and having a professional city administrator, changing the Board of Estimates. Those kind of things should be considered as well, because again, this is about doing something that hasn't been done. We have a $3.4 billion government that operates the same exact way with the same exact structure in 2020 as it did in 1974. No wonder it hasn't been successful in providing for its constituents.
And finally, the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis follows the killing of so many other black men at the hands of police around the country. We had the killing of Freddie Gray here in Baltimore 5 years ago. And one of the issues that's been raised is around the budget is what the city invests in. Scholars like Dr. Lawrence Brown have noted that Baltimore spends more on police than healthcare, education, so many other issues combined. Do you think the goal in Baltimore should be changing the priorities of the budget and investing more in the future rather than things like incarceration?
Well, listen, I know this better than anyone in this race, right? Being the only person to graduate from city schools in this millennia, the only person to grow up and live here completely my entire life in Baltimore, I was a person who had to have those lies in the back of my head because of zero tolerance just to get out. I went to school with no heat and air. I didn't have my first air-conditioned classroom until 9th grade at Mayoral. We understand and know that the most important thing that we're facing right now is the Curbing Commission. It's not an option. We know that this is what we have to do. It's not the question if it's the right thing. It's if we have the courage to do it. And this is what we know. In Baltimore, for every year that I've been alive, they've been investing in the failure of our young people versus their promise. We have to flip that around. So we know that our school system's budget is going to have to go up over time, and the police department's budget is going to have to go down. And we're going to have to make sure that we're level setting that with also health and rec and parks growing as well, so that we're investing in communities in the first place and not on the back end.
And finally, cities around the world and cities in the United States like New York and Chicago have participatory budgeting where citizens get to vote on a local level on how they want to allocate certain funds. People have proposed that here in Baltimore. Let the voters decide how that budget is spent. Would you support that kind of proposal?
Yeah, this is a concept that I think that we should definitely look at more, and especially I'm thinking about this through the lens of my equity legislation, especially around the capital budget, which has been the most inequitable spending for the city. And when I take office, I want to actually have a deep look at how we can do that to have more citizen participation in how we're spending dollars, especially those big capital expenses that we're going to have.
All right, Brandon Scott, City Council President here in Baltimore, Maryland. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.